Namaskar. Welcome to another episode of Editorial. Would you believe if I say that 21 richest Indians have more wealth than 70 crore of Indians? Well, that's what Oxfam report says, which they released this morning. They have also given a 7-point recommendation to the government of India. Let's discuss all of this threadbare. Let's get right into the show. Okay, so let's bifurcate this editorial into 3 parts. Part number 1, we will discuss the observations of Oxfam. We'll discuss that. The second point, we will discuss the 7 recommendations that Oxfam gave to the government of India. And finally, we will do our analysis. ठीक है ना? Let's start with the observation of Oxfam. I want to talk about figures and facts, so I'll be reading a lot, so please excuse me for that. The first point that Oxfam made was, since the pandemic began in November 2022, billionaires in India have seen their wealth surge by 121% or rupees 3,608 crores per day in real terms. The second point they made was approximately 64% of the total rupees 14.83 lakh crores in goods and service taxes came from the bottom 50% of the population in 2021-22. Only 3% of this came from the top 10%. So taxes collectively paid by the bottom 50% population was 64%, but the money they have is less than 21 top richest people in the country. Just 5% of Indians own more than 60% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 50% of Indian population possesses only 3% of the wealth. Okay, compare this to the GST now. The second point, the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, revealed that the total number of billionaires in India increased from 102 in 2020 to 166 billionaires in 2022. The combined wealth of India's 100 richest has touched $660 billion. That is 54.12 lakh crores. That is the wealth of India's 100 richest. An amount that could fund the entire union budget for more than 18 months. That's the kind of money that the top 100 people in India has earned. The wealth of the top 10 richest can finance the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Ministry of Ayush for more than 30 years, or can finance Indian Union's education budget for 26 years, or can fund the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act Manrega for 38 years. Amitabh Behar, CEO of Oxfam India, said that the country's marginalized Dalit, Adivasis, Muslims, women and informal sector workers are continuing to suffer in a system which ensures the survival of the richest. The poor are paying disproportionately higher taxes, spending more on essential items and services when compared to the rich. The time has come to tax the rich and ensure that they pay their fair share. We urge the finance minister to implement progressive tax measures such as wealth tax and inheritance tax, which have been historically proven to be effective in tackling inequality. Okay, now let me come to 7 recommendations that Oxfam has made to the government of India, and then we will come to the analysis part of it. The 7 recommendations that Oxfam makes to the government of India are as follows. Number 1, Oxfam says introduce one-off solidarity wealth tax and windfall tax to end crisis profiteering. I will just explain this to you. What they are saying is, if a person, if a company, if an individual, if a group is profiting out of crisis because of the situation, because of the crisis, because of a pandemic, create tax zones, create tax systems where they're taxed more. The second thing they say is Permanently increase taxes on the rich, 1%. The finance minister must especially raise taxes on capital gains, which are subject to lower taxes rates and other forms of income. Also, implement inheritance, property, and land taxes, as well as net wealth taxes. Point number 3, enhance the budgetary allocation of the health sector to 2.5% of the GDP by 2025, as envisaged by the National Health Policy, to reinvigorate the public healthcare system, reduce OP expenditure, and strengthen health prevention and promotions. Point number 4, strengthen primary healthcare centers, community healthcare centers, and government hospital with adequate number of doctors, nurses, equipments, and other infrastructure as per Indian public healthcare standard norms to make the quality of health services available within 3 kilometers radius of people, residents, or workshop. 5th, enhance the budgetary allocation of education to the global benchmark of 6% of GDP as also committed in the National Education Policy. The government must frame a year-wise financial roadmap to achieve 6% mark. Point number 6, reduce existing inequality in education by spending more on programs, for example, pre-metric and post-metric scholarship, meant for improving education status of students from marginalized section, that is scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, girls. Point number 7, ensure workers in formal and informal sectors are paid basic minimum wages. The minimum wages should be at par with living wages, which is essential to live a life with dignity. These are the 7 points. Now, long and short, what they are saying? They are saying that, listen, tax the rich. Tax people who are profiteering out of crisis. Put tax for people who've got a lot of wealth, who've got wealth in their banks. Tax them so that the burden is lifted from the poor. That's the first point they're making. Second point they're making is allocate more budgets. Allocate more budgets for healthcare. I completely agree to this. Allocate more budgets for healthcare. More budgets for people who cannot afford healthcare. Ensure that they get healthcare. Ensure that healthcare is spread across the country, not only in urban India, but also in rural India. The point number 3 is uplift education system. Spend on education, especially for the marginalized class. This is what they're saying. And then the last point they made is to give a life of dignity. Let people who are working for formal and informal sectors, workers working in formal and informal sector, live a life of dignity. That's the 7 points, broadly, is what they made. Are these points right? Absolutely, the points are right. But there is one point I want to make. You see, while we say 26% have got more wealth than 70 crore people, while we say that they pay only 3% taxes, one should not look at wealth creators, one should not look at people who create wealth as enemies. That is wrong. Secondly, you have wealth, therefore I will take it from you and give it to a poor is Robin Hood technique. While it sounds right, we all may agree and say, yes, that's the answer, but that may not necessarily be the answer. If you start taxing the rich and put more and more tax on the rich, what the rich will do is they will easily afford to change the passport from India, go to some other country and settle there, which is something that we are also talking about. We also talk about 6 lakh odd Indians settling abroad, going abroad, HNIs, high net worth individuals going abroad and settling there. This is also going to happen. So if you are going to go and taxing the rich, then they are going to go out and go to some other country and settle down. So therefore, wealth creators will desert you. So there has to be certain balance. The answer is not black or white. The answer is somewhere in the middle. The answer does not lie with just taxing the rich and therefore everything being right. It doesn't. There are 3 problems to it. Like I said, first, the rich may go out. The rich may leave the country, go and settle in another country. Second is, people will get scared of being rich because the more rich you are, the more taxes the more you are burdened with taxes. The third point is, the fact is finally who suffers? It is the poor who will suffer because there will be no jobs, there will be no industry. In fact, the fourth point, which is the most important point, is that how do you know that the government collecting the taxes from the rich actually goes to poor? Are all taxes which are collected today going to the poor? Do we have a healthcare facility today? We call ourselves the fourth largest economy. Do we have a good healthcare facility? Do we have an education facility? Where is the money going? Have you ever bothered to ask? Is any report asking that? Where is the money going? Where is it being allocated? Is it being allocated for aircrafts and parliament houses? Where is it being allocated for? To? Have we bothered about how are we spending our money? So that's another question we need to ask. So the solution to our problem is not necessarily taxing the rich. The solution to our problem is ensuring that rich would want to pay more taxes to the government. To ensure that the rich are given enough perks, enough incentivization to pay more taxes so that they pay more taxes happily. Not that they feel that there's a gun on their head and they have to pay taxes. Paying taxes should never be seen as a burden. It should be seen as a pleasure. If a person who has got more money, that he or she feels good to pay those taxes, then we are a winner. He or she feels good, we get the tax money, everybody is happy. So that's my point. That's the point I would like to make. Now, before I end, I'll end with one small example to prove what I just said. Okay, now on the 13th of January, Congressman Rich McCormick, he praises Indian American. He said that I rise to this occasion to just appreciate my constituents, especially those who have migrated from India. He says that although they make up just 1% of American society, they pay up to 6% of their taxes. They are amongst the top producers and they do not cause any problem. You know why I mentioned this example? I mentioned this example is because 1% of population of Indians sitting there in America are contributing to 6% of their taxes and they are doing it happily. They are doing it happily. People are even today queuing outside American consulate to see if they can migrate to America or get a job in America or work in America or live in America. With all these taxes are not just with India. Even Americans pay a hell of a lot tax. Taxes are an issue with Americans too. But Indians are lining up to go and migrate to America or work in America. Why? Because they are okay to pay that taxes because the privilege that they get, the healthcare that they get, the government services that they get, the infrastructure they have, the privileges that they have, it's okay for them to give that taxes. They feel good to give that taxes. Create that privilege in India, believe me you, no matter what, anybody, whoever will love to pay the taxes. But with that money, we can ensure that every Indian will get a better healthcare. With that money, we can ensure that there is food in every Indian's table. With that money, we can ensure that the rest of India develops, rest of India grows. And it is never seen as a burden on the person who is paying that extra taxes. This is the point I would like to make. Till I meet you next time, that is tomorrow at 10 p.m. Namaskar.
To know about the latest updates on our new news app, go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.